Hey everyone, it's Mary-Ann Maldonado here. I am glad you're with me today. I am creating with the May 2022 Hip Kit Club kits. I am layering some paper, so for today I had the assignment of using a cardstock piece as my background. So I used a large cardstock piece, cut a pattern piece, and then another cardstock piece on top of it. So you get a little bit of the detail from the patterned paper that I have in between the two cardstock pages. I'm going to show you a technique here I learned as I went along, so hopefully you'll give it a try. But I wanted to change the color of the buttons. I felt like my layout was a little more delicate in colors than what these buttons had to offer. So I dug out some sandpaper, two different types. One didn't work, so I grabbed another and I started sanding some of the color off the top, and you can see here the two differences, a lot bolder on the left and softer on the right. So all I did was change the coloring of my buttons. I could have painted them, but you'll see too, I'm going to sew with them in a little bit, and I'm not much of a sewer, or I try to avoid it if I can. I don't mind using my machine, but hand sewing isn't typically my thing. So I'm also stenciling, using the stencils and the little Gina K inks that came in the color kit this month. And I used 3 of the colors. I think the blue might be a little bit bright. And down below, I use it on the bottom left corner a little bit later on. But unfortunately, my video had stopped. A call had come in. I took the call and the video stopped. Or I didn't even take the call, but the video stopped and I did not get the ending of my layout coming together for you. So the same technique I used for the florals that you see here, the stenciled flowers, I used at the bottom left corner towards the end of what should have been the video. So you'll see that, but I don't typically stencil, and I had bought in those Altenew little brushes, and they worked perfectly for that stencil that was provided in the color kit this month. So you can see that I've used some of the project pocket pieces for my background instead of paper, and I really love the details that these brought. Instead of cutting paper, these had white on the bottom, or white and a little journaling up at the top, so it added a lot of detail on those harder pieces instead of adding paper here. So I really enjoy using those on a layout. I typically use a lot more, but this one I kept a little more simpler. So I lined up my buttons. I have a little plastic tea ruler that I use to help me make sure that those are in a perfect line, because that would drive me insane. So I lined them up nice and straight before I stick them down or put any pressure on those buttons to stick them down onto the page, because God knows that would be crooked, and then I'd have to rip it up, and I'd rip my paper, and then I'd have to start the whole layout all over again. Who here hasn't done that? I've done that so many times. So what I did was I stuck the buttons on a scratch piece of paper with some adhesive that I put down, put the buttons on the paper, and then that's when I used that adhesive to hold them in place so I could sand them. It worked great. There's so many ways you can work with these buttons. You can sand them like I did to soften them. You can paint them. You could sand them, then paint them, or paint them, then sand them. You could do so many things. Cover them with Nuvo drops and make them a little bit more kind of like what's that called? Like an epoxy type covering on them. But what I've done here is I put a little mouse pad type thing behind my buttons, and I'm just piercing holes, making it big enough where I can put my needle through with my twine. And so it's a bigger needle to be able to accommodate the twine. And I am not going to make you watch this whole entire process. It took me a minute. I did go through each hole twice. So I wrapped it twice so that the twine would be a little bit thicker. Actually, it's not a twine, it's more of a string. But I did go through every button twice, or every double hole twice. You can see how long it's taking me just to do this first button, so I do spare you from that. However, it looks beautiful when it's done, and towards the ends of each of those column of buttons, you'll see that I put 2 more holes and put thread out towards the side of the button and tied bows. So it draws your eye and gives a little more detail to the buttons. You'll see that in a second, and especially at the end with the close-ups that I'm going to show you. And I left my close-ups up a little bit longer so you could see the detail that I added when I was not recording, when I thought I was. So you'll see that in those close-ups. And I'm sure you can pause it if you want to take a better look. But remember to join our Kit Club. You get a lot of benefits. You get discounted prices, free cut files. We'd love to have you come join our member forum. You'll find a lot of inspiration over there with our design team and with other customers and friends of our group. So here is where I cut off recording, and here are my close-ups. You can see the bow over to the side of the buttons. I did punch holes outside of those buttons for that string. So I hope you enjoyed this layout today. Sorry that you didn't get to see the full process, but I appreciate you joining me, and I'll see you next time.